Good afternoon, and as Stephanie said, I'm Dharshini David. I cover mainly financial stuff for the BBC, and it's my privilege this afternoon to introduce our next keynote speaker, who is Carolyn McCall, of course, Chief Executive of ITV since 2018. So welcome back, Carolyn, I should say. As a financial hack myself, it's very easy to get jaded by slogans, and when you talk about reshaping Britishness on a global stage, might be tempted to roll my eyes, but in other words, frankly, when it comes to broadcasting, this does seem to be one area in which we're reshaping the global stage through our Britishness. And just to give you one example, I was driving through suburban New Jersey a couple of weeks ago, and the local radio DJ was gushing enthusiastically about the forthcoming Labor Day holiday, the advent of pumpkin season, and Love Island.
Good.
So that's
good.
That was a moment, and you are, of course, the woman behind that water cooler moment 3,500 miles away. You don't need much of an introduction, but I should say, of course, you were previously at the helm of EasyJet and also at the Guardian Media Group. I won't ask you what you think of my chairman's comment about the price of the Guardian newspaper. Not just yet, anyway. But you've now been, as I say, at ITV for 3 years, and that's been marked by your ambition to digitally transform the business. So we've got about half an hour, so let's start off talking about that, because you have your More Than TV strategy. It's now, what, 3 years old?
About 3, yeah. I've been there about nearly 4 years now.
4 years,
yeah.
So no longer the new girl on the stage. Must be quite a relief, actually, coming back and not having that at the RTS. But your aim was to transform ITV through your global studio offering and also, of course, the direct-to-consumer business. So just update us on how that's been going.
So actually, I think it's gone pretty well so far, but I would honestly say we're only a third of the way through what we were trying to do. Interestingly, I think the pandemic has accelerated our digital transformation, and I'll come back to that. But I think when I got to ITV, it was doing very well financially, and had put a lot of money into production and growing the production businesses and creating studios. And we're continuing to do that. But what really hadn't been invested in is technology, data, analytics, and all the capabilities that go behind that. And also iPlayer, as you heard this morning, is 20 years old. And Hub was something that was a catch-up service, not a destination, which had not benefited from any investment. So there was a lot of work to do. And actually part of that work was a mindset change about the burning platform, which is what you've been hearing about. It doesn't matter how well your numbers are doing, actually you can see the change all around you. There's a macro change going on. The streamers are part of that, very much so. But we have to innovate, develop, and technology is a great disruptor for us, but it's also a great opportunity and enabler for us, and we weren't really taking advantage of any of that. So therefore, the strategy really was about transforming broadcast, and we can deliver mass audiences, and we'll continue to deliver mass audiences, but actually developing Hub, understanding users as well as viewers, it's quite a different thing. And really developing that was important. Continuing to expand studios. We're still very ambitious for studios because it's another pillar of profit for us rather than an ad-funded linear business. And then actually really starting to establish ourselves in direct-to-consumer. We hadn't done that before. We're now really past that. We're now in phase 2 of that. So we're now kind of becoming more sophisticated in direct-to-consumer. And we look at it as digital products and how we work. So it's kind of what we deliver to our customers, to our viewers and our customers, because there are paying customers now, whether that's BritBox, whether that's Hub, whether that's Hub Plus, whether that's other forms of streaming that we might do. And then also, being available on any platform, which I know sounds, we were talking about this years and years and years ago, just being available at any time and any place and anywhere. But actually it's a reality now, and if you're not doing that and doing that very well, then you get left behind. So we're still growing studios, we've bought labels, we're backing talent, but we are transforming broadcast in a much more accelerated way. And that's really, I think, what the next 3 years is going to be about. We've restructured into a media and entertainment division. We have one content budget. And the thing I think we have as a unique advantage as ITV is we have enormous amounts of content.
Sure.
We make content and we play content, we broadcast content. And that is something in terms of a windowing strategy that we're going to do much more of. I mean, we have done some windowing, but not enough of it, and I think that will change quite dramatically going forward.
And of course, that brings into view your relationship with the streamers. It's impossible to talk about ITV without going, aha, they're these giant, very rich streamers out there. But it's a very complex relationship because, as you say, they're competition and their customer as well. Now, you've penned a lot on trying to grow the amount of content you sell to the likes of them, but frankly, they can do Britishness themselves, as they've proved. And also, the cost of actually doing that content is rising, the margins are getting squeezed on that side. So is that really a viable strategy?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's not that complex, actually. I think it's pretty straightforward. In Britain, we are a kind of national champion, we'd say, with the BBC. You know, we know what we're doing for British audiences. We research that all the time. We understand what is going on by and large. We are strong regionally as ITV, as John said this morning. We do that well. So we have a network. And now that is a digital network, increasingly, as well as a linear network. And the way we make money from that increasingly will become divided between linear advertising and AVOD. And we will be AVOD-led in the digital world with a compelling SVOD service. That's one thing. As far as the streamers are concerned, they are also our customers. And we're not just in the UK. Our studios business, as you know, is a global business. And so the Love Island you were hearing referred to, I think, was probably Love Island US rather than UK, because that's in 17 countries around the world. We produce it, so we license it and we produce it around the world. I mean, The Voice is 70 countries around the world. So a really important part of our business is taking our IP and selling it to streamers and other broadcasters and cable companies all around the world. So our relationship with the streamers is very straightforward. They like a lot of what we do and they commission us to make it. And we do that successfully.
And BritBox, I mean, where does that point come at which you say, right, that's the limit for growth? And at what point does it become profitable as well?
So BritBox is doing well in the UK. It's doing around 555,000 subscribers. It's about a year and a bit old, so that's good. I think it's an amazing, it was an amazing leap forward for all of the PSBs in the UK to be able to agree to do BritBox. And so I think it is very distinctive, and that is a very UK-oriented product, and it is archive content plus the recent past and some originals. I mean, not anywhere near the originals what in the way a streamer would do it. It's not trying to do that, really. I think globally, BritBox is a different thing, and Tim might talk about this tomorrow, but actually the US is doing very well. Now, that is a joint venture between the BBC and ITV, and it's going really, really well. There is a real demand for Britishness, whatever that means.
What is Britishness nowadays?
Well, we had a whole session on it. I think it's very, I don't relate to that term very well either, because I was born and bred in India and lived abroad all my life. So actually, you know, Britishness is what you define it to be in actual fact. But I think globally, what it means is high quality British content originated in Britain, stories about Britain that have British talent in it most of the time. And there is a real demand for it. So the US is going well, as I said. Australia has launched and South Africa is about to launch. And I think we will roll out to many more countries quite aggressively, actually, as we go forward. So that's a different kind of digital product for a very defined audience. You
mentioned the PSBs there, and of course the Ofcom review is in. Does ITV want to remain a public service broadcaster?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, remember, we're a commercial PSB, so it's a very different.
Yes.
That's a very different model to either Channel 4 or the BBC. We have to make money. We have shareholders. But we also get some privileges for being a PSB. So yes, I think so. But I do think that it does really depend on the modernisation of the 2003 Broadcasting Act, which, as Richard pointed out, you know, I think Facebook was called Face Mash when that act was put together.
And Netflix was posting us DVDs
so,
at that point.
You know, exactly. I mean, it was a really different time. So I do think the DCMS has got that, and I think, therefore, government has got that. The whole issue of prominence and inclusion and fair value, you know, the thing is, we take a lot of risk on our content. We can go to a platform, they can demand whatever they want for our content to put it on their platform, and they don't have to give it prominence in the digital world in a way that they have to in the linear world. So there are some obvious flaws which prevent PSBs really being able to thrive in that digital space. So I think Ofcom have already reported. They certainly get it. It's going to be up to government to legislate now.
And government, not just DCMS, but the government as a whole, are they good at listening, hearing, and acting?
Look, I think DCMS are good at listening. I've yet to see evidence of the acting, and that's not being controversial, I don't think. I think really it's all to play for now. I mean, they've got so much information from all of us about the change. They can see it happening in front of their eyes, and they value PSBs. I think you've heard a number of times today that the public service broadcasters through lockdown, have been a lifeline for people, accurate, trusted news. Our daytime programs were not off air, not for a minute, from the second lockdown hit. All of our news programs, including regionally, were on, and people worked very, very hard through some very testing times. And that's what people wanted. They really needed that. And also some of the light, the daytime programs that we do were, just making people feel reassured. So I do think the government has really valued that. And I think one of the reasons they've extended the DTT spectrum, they see the value of that way of transmitting, which is robust, resilient, and trusted. That's not to say there's not a lot of change to come. It's just to say they now have to act.
And actually to step up. In terms of stepping up there, what about ITV itself? Because the window is open for you to renew your licence. Public service. Have you done it?
Well, no, it's not open.
It's not open.
We have till 2022. No,
next year you can start now, can't you?
Well, we have started discussions now, but it's not till 2023 actually. So 2022 is the year we start those discussions.
But it's underway.
So I mean, it would be strange for us to renew anything right now until we know what the legislation is going to be.
And I've got to ask you the obvious question, because the public consultation on the future of Channel 4 has now shut. We've had lots of views on this, and ITV's name keeps coming up in the frame. You're the woman who turned around EasyJet and trimmed the fat from that. I mean, surely this must have appeal.
Look, the most important thing for us is, I think Richard referred to this in his speech, which is about the ecology. I think he called it typography, I think you called it, of the PSBs. It's incredibly important, I think, that the remit of Channel 4 remains the remit of Channel 4, because I think it does work in an ecology of public service broadcasting. And that, I think, is a very important thing. I mean, the government, this is really a matter for the government and for Parliament. The government could change their mind. I mean, we just don't know. I mean, when you think about high-fat, sugar and salt advertising, for a long time that wasn't going to happen. Then it was, then it wasn't, now it is. So they change, things can change very quickly. So I think it's a matter for them. They've taken the initiative.
Will they right to ask the question?
Will they?
Right to ask the question about privatisation.
Look, it comes up periodically. It seems to come up every 10 years anyway. And I think in the dramatic change in the ecology, there is a dramatic shift, not just viewing, but also how you make money. I mean, ITV are now making money. In the past, even just 6 years ago, 5 years ago, ITV was predominantly ad-funded, linear ad-funded. We are now, probably 50% of our revenue is coming from advertising funding, and part of that is coming from digital advertising, not from linear. And the other 50% is studios, so production, and interactive and other things that we're doing. We're investing in some other businesses, et cetera, et cetera. So it's already, how we make money has had to change.
And how does that split up, though, between the digital advertising and the more linear channels? I mean, how does that split up?
So we bought an ad tech platform. So one of the things, when I came along, the team were already onto it, but hadn't done it. Within about a year, we'd bought an Amobi platform, an ad tech platform. What that allows us to do on Hub is do personalized targeted advertising. And of course, we have all the data with permission of the users to be able to use to target them. So advertisers can use that, and they can do that directly right? So they just plug into our system. And that is transformational. So we're taking a lot more money from AVOD now than we were 3 years ago. I mean, significantly more money. And that is a new stream for us. That's something that we weren't really getting much of. So we are able to offer the mass audiences quality, trusted environment, as well as personalized and targeted advertising, which is what kind of YouTube and Facebook do. So it allows us to compete in a different way. And that's really important. Then we have a subscription model with BritBox and with Hub Plus. We also have the studios model. They're all different business models. And the reason I'm talking about that is very much part of our strategy to ensure that we have a diversity of business models that we can become experts in. And we're already an advertising leader. We have to remain that because it's so hard to make profit.
Of course. But back to Channel 4, because you didn't answer my question, but we'll get back to that in a moment, because you're also a keen tennis player. How did it feel on Saturday night seeing Channel 4 having the women's final of the US Open, having that massive audience? Did you bid for it? And how much?
Well, I watched it on Prime very late that night. That's how happy I was. So we...
Ouch.
Well, we bid for it. This is the truth. We bid for it. And, I started off by saying we're a commercial PSB, and we have to make a return on our money. And so we really wanted it, and we capped ourselves because, one, we know that it's a moment of TV, it's fantastic rating, but for us, it has to be sustainable because we have to make the ad money. And we also would have wanted to sell advertising around it, because that's our model for linear. So yeah.
So how did it, I mean, if you think there's a limit to how much you're willing to pay, and Channel 4 have gone beyond that, do you think they would have done that in normal times?
I have no idea. You have to ask Alex tomorrow. I have no idea.
About that. But you haven't answered my earlier question, which was about Channel 4. Would you be considering it?
I'm never going to be drawn on that, am I? I'm never going to.
It must be some
just as Richard and Dana and everybody else has said, and as we're all going to say the same thing, which is it is up to the government to decide, and it's not up to us to speculate, and none of us would.
But you have made a submission to
all of us would have made a submission.
And what do you think Channel 4 should look like in the future? Because clearly there's lots of concerns about the futures of the various indies that it works with, for example.
Look, I think it's very, you started by talking about reshaping. I mean, we're reshaping all the time. What existed 18 months ago for ITV, we've kind of put aside some of it and we've developed other things and we've amplified other things and we're going faster in certain ways. We might not have 2 years ago thought that. So I don't really know about what shape that should be, because I'm very focused on ITV and what shape ITV should be in. It is a very fast-moving thing, this whole strategic future. And you've got to be nimble. I think you've got to constantly be looking at what you're doing and how you're doing it. You can't be wedded to one particular thing. You've got to continue to evolve.
And you mentioned there that the pandemic had accelerated some parts of your strategy.
Yeah.
What in particular?
Well, I think the good thing, really, in a strange way, I mean, not much was brilliant about the pandemic. I mean, it was pretty difficult for everyone. And we, for us, again, commercially, we were very worried about our cash situation in the first 3-4 months.
You took a pay cut, didn't you?
We all did.
Yeah.
But, we took some dramatically difficult decisions in our first 3 weeks of the pandemic, because we had to preserve our cash. We're a commercial company, and if you run out of cash, you stop being in business. So that was really a very tough period. But actually, as we went through it, what we realized is we could also accelerate some of the change that we had been planning. So we restructured the media and entertainment, created the media and entertainment division through lockdown. And we also really ramped up our communication with people and did podcasts every week and made people feel very involved. We did a lot of consulting people about what they were liking, what they weren't liking, what we could do more of, what we could do less of. We did quite a lot on diversity and inclusion through lockdown. We used to have lots of outside-in speakers from around the world.
That was one of the areas you weren't doing quite as well as you hoped on.
No, and so we accelerated all of that. That was, I think, really positive. And of course, we've made some key decisions about acceleration on the hub, for instance, through lockdown, because all our tech teams could still work completely normally, because many of them worked from home, and actually they find it very easy and more productive working from home. So actually the acceleration is what changed. I mean, we re-looked at our whole strategy. We had a session with the board. We kind of kicked it around and said, what aren't we doing? What are we missing? So that was also good to reflect at a very tough time when you were looking at the balance sheet and you're looking at the P&L, and you were thinking, we really have to look at this in every way and differently.
And we've seen some encouraging signs in recent months. I mean, advertising revenue surprised in September. Is it back to business as usual? And are you going to get your pay back to normal levels?
Look, I don't know. I think you've got to be slightly careful. I think there's definitely a bounce back, and it's very buoyant at the moment, and that's really fantastic. But I think there is quite an element of bounce back in there, and I hope that will last. But we don't know. I think we just don't know. We don't know how the winter's going to pan out yet, and we don't know what is going to happen next year. So I think there still remains uncertainty. I'm fine with uncertainty because I think we have a robust business, and we actually have a more resilient business now than we did when we went into lockdown. And so I think we can absorb the uncertainty. We just have to keep moving ahead. We need to keep the momentum we've got. You know, we have achieved an awful lot in 3 years. We've just got to keep doing it, and that's quite tiring for
your
people.
shareholders as well that this transformation. I mean, your valuation has been falling more or less over the last 7 years, even before you were joining. How do you convince them you're on the right track here?
I think the issue with it's not our shareholders. Our shareholders are extremely positive about the strategy, and the feedback is very positive from shareholders. I think the analysts are skeptical about the structural headwinds being behind us. And I think we have to prove to them that we are mitigating those headwinds and that they are going to be behind us quite soon. Because at some point, I mean, linear is still a very effective way of watching telly, and it brings in a lot of money. And it will plateau at some point in terms of viewing and revenue. And the market needs, I think, to be reassured that the worst of the headwind, as they see it, is behind us and that we are dealing with it. That's what's going on. The share price is volatile anyway. I mean, someone just sneezes somewhere and the share price goes off. So
yes, markets aren't exactly
we don't even look at it. If you looked at the share price, you'd be depressed every day. So we don't look at it, really. We don't. I've learned that EasyJet. You know, I think, honestly, the share price when I left EasyJet was 16 quid. It's now 6. So, I mean, if you looked at the EasyJet share price, you'd be very depressed.
I'm not going to ask you if you'd rather be running an airline right now, but Carolyn, we've only got a couple of minutes.
Quite hard.
We've only got a couple of minutes, so a couple of questions. Richard Sharp was talking a lot about impartiality there. Now, in some circles, impartiality is seen as almost a dirty word. Has it become tainted with the sense that that is, frankly, the preserve of the woke? And do we have to somehow rescue that?
Love that word. Well, I think impartiality is absolutely central to what we do as a PSB. And we are judged on that, and we are regulated on that, and we are extremely mindful when we put our programs together about how that works. And so we can have probably more than the BBC. We've probably got a bit more latitude in terms of opinions and freedom of expression, right? I think probably, but we balance that, you know, with people who have different opinions, and that's why we don't breach Ofcom rules.
Talking of Ofcom rules, well, I mean, clearly you've got to think about how you grow your appeal on the global stage and the domestic stage at the same time. So is it time for a bigger role, perhaps, with some of your better-known names, for example, Piers Morgan, is it trying to bring him back more into the fold? And as we were hearing there from Stephanie, Andrew Neil's looking a bit free these days as well. So any ideas?
Look, I think Andrew and Piers are going to do really well wherever they go. I really do.
Should that be ITV then?
Well, Piers resigned from ITV,
yes,
and therefore, you know, I will just say that we vigorously defended both the programme and Piers to Ofcom, and the reason we didn't get pulled up by them is because of the programme making. So the skill of the programme makers was that they had a lot of opinions, and therefore they judged that we didn't cause any harm or an offence. So we are, you know, there's no way we wouldn't be absolutely not just endorsing, but actually championing freedom of speech and freedom of expression. I think our daytime shows exemplify that. But, you know, I think you're going to get Andrew and Piers working on some global platform any day soon.
Okay, so what should they be talking about in New Jersey? very finally, but back to where I started. New
What's
Jersey
the
local
next
radio.
thing?
What are we going to talk about?
I'm a
next?
Celebrity is the next big thing to look forward to, I think.
And who's on it?
I can't tell you. I can't.
Karen, come on, just a sneak. Give us
No, I can't.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
Anton Decker on it.
Well, there you go. A global scoop. Carolyn McCall, a great pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.